standing for truth in the four corners of America, fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars, and turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Ariel Sharon, former Prime Minister of Israel, dead at age 85. On January 11th, he left this life after being in a coma for 8 years. The doctors said toward the end of his life that they saw brain activity when he saw pictures or when he heard the voice of his son, but as far as the reports are concerned, he was never able to communicate with people again after he fell into a coma. Ariel Sharon was one of the most dominant and prominent figures in Israeli politics as well as the Israeli military. In 1948, as a young man fighting for Israel's independence, he took a bullet in the gut and was literally left for dead. A 16-year-old comrade dragged him to safety and his life was saved. He played prominent roles in the wars in 1967 and in 1973, and literally, against the orders of the leadership in Israel, took 200 tanks and 5,000 men to the Suez Canal in Egypt. He was hated, and I repeat, hated by the Palestinians. Hamas had this to say after he died: "The death of Sharon, after 8 years in a coma, is a sign from God and a lesson for all tyrants. The Palestinian people are living a historic moment with the departure of this criminal who has stained his hands with the blood of our people and its leaders. We are more confident in the victory of God in light of the departure of these tyrants." Sometimes, dear friend, a man's worth is known by the hatred of his enemies. And Sharon certainly had them because he was unflinching in his war on Islamic terrorism. He also agitated American presidents. Vice President Biden spoke at his memorial service, and this is what our Vice President had to say.
But there were times when he acted, and those actions earned him controversy and even condemnation. And in certain instances, American leaders, American presidents had profound differences with him. And they were never shy about stating them, nor was he ever shy about stating his position. But like all historic leaders, all real leaders, he had a North Star that guided him. A North Star from which he never, in my observation, never deviated.
Well, the North Star, of course, was the preservation of the state of Israel. And I want to use this moment for all of us. Sharon was, without question, the bulldozer. He got things done. Sometimes he made mistakes. In 1983, he was forced to resign as their defense minister because under his watch, Lebanese Christian militia went into a Palestinian refugee camp and killed people. Sharon ended up taking some of the blame for that because he did not try and stop them. So you can see from the comments of the Palestinians why they hated him. But they also respected him. They feared him. And he might have been able to broker a peace had he not gone into a coma. We'll never know. But this we do know. None of us are going to get out of here alive. And after we die, our lives will still speak. The only question is, what will they say? And who will hear what our life communicated and still communicates? There's a passage in the book of Hebrews speaking of when Cain killed his brother Abel, And the writer of the book of Hebrews says that that Abel, being dead, yet speaks. Though he is dead, he yet speaks. Each of us are going to say something after we die. The question is, what will we be saying? Will we be saying that our family mattered the most, our faith in God, our pursuit of justice? Will our life be saying that Dad just loved to sit in front of the TV for hours on end? Boy, Mom sure loved that lazy boy. What will our lives say? And so I encourage you to take this moment as we look briefly at the life of Ariel Sharon, to remember that each of us, you, me, we are going to die. And after we are dead, what will our lives say? Who will hear what our lives have to say? And will the words of our life after our death bring people closer to God, closer to the love of their neighbor and the love of their family, closer to the pursuit of justice? Or will our lives and the words of our lives simply and quickly grow silent and fade into a gray twilight where they are forgotten? May God help us to have our lives, to live our lives in such a way that they have meaning now and after we are dead. My wife and I, for 5 years, have been grinding our own wheat and baking our own bread from scratch. Within 2 hours, you can have fresh wheat in your hand and then piping hot bread come out of the oven. The most nutritious and delicious bread you will ever have. And we do it for under $1 a loaf. Call Paulas Bread and find out about this grain mill and the mixer and how it can save you money and change your life. How would you like to be able to reach hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of potential customers with your product or your company or your web-based business? Well, you can do that right here on this show. Every single day, we get phone calls or letters or orders online from states all over the country where people are watching this television show. Right now, we are seen in 45 cities at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every night, and then a rerun again at 12:30 midnight. You can reach them using this show at advertising rates that are so inexpensive, it would blow your mind. So, if you're interested, contact us at the phone number that you see on the screen or the email address, and we can talk about how you can grow your business and help support this show. Thomas Jefferson said, "All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent." More on government corruption, Eric Holder, the IRS, and Chris Christie. Let's start with Governor Christie. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse with all of the hubbub regarding the closure of the lanes going over the George Washington Bridge, it comes out that Chris Christie received, the state of New Jersey received, some $25 million from the federal government to help rebuild after the superstorm Sandy slammed into New Jersey and really brought devastation to much of the Jersey Shore. Chris Christie decided that he would use some of the money in an ad campaign to say to people, hey, we're open for business. Let's run the ad.
It's in our blood, our DNA. It's who we are, we're here to stay. 'Cause we're stronger than the storm.
The Jersey Shore is open.
The word is spreading.
Because we're stronger than the storm.
You bet we are.
Now, it's kind of nice. That's his wife, his kids. It's a family spot. But here's the problem. Chris Christie authorized $4.7 million to be spent on that ad. However, there was a lower bid, $2.5 million. The difference was that the $2.5 million ad campaign did not have the Christie family. So he spent our money, $2.2 million of our money to be precise, more on an ad, maybe because his family got to be in it. He was running for re-election as governor at the time, so that was an enormous amount of very positive, happy face time, and he clearly has presidential aspirations, so it helped him with his presidential bid. Well, the federal government is now investigating whether or not there was corruption. But not to fear. To switch gears just a little bit, we can be assured that Eric Holder is going to pursue justice regarding the IRS. Not really. The Department of Justice has announced that there will be no criminal charges filed regarding IRS agents who harassed and who held up the paperwork of various right-wing Tea Party groups during the end of Obama's first administration, his first term in office. Now, part of us wants to just move on and let's look at what's going on in entertainment or in sports, but listen to me. Freedom of speech in this country, the ability to oppose political leaders, the ability to speak on critical political issues is central to our experiment in self-government. It is foundational to the life and the well-being of the republic. And there, without doubt, were IRS agents and management that were deliberately holding up the paperwork for groups that opposed Obama and that wanted to work for his defeat and basically neutered them, just carved their guts out so that they would be of little or no use in the 2012 election cycle. In other words, they subverted free speech and may have subverted an election. And yet the Attorney General is saying that he will not prosecute. He may go after Christie. And by the way, it doesn't smell right to me what Christie did, but don't worry. He's going to protect Obama and Obama's cronies, and at this point there'll be no criminal charges filed against anyone in the IRS. Some lessons learned. Number one, we want and we must have equal enforcement of the law. That's why Lady Justice has a blindfold on. She's just weighing the scales. She doesn't want to see the faces of people. She doesn't want it to be partisan or, well, you're a Democrat, so we're going to treat you right. You're a Republican, we're coming after you. That is not what justice is. Justice is the equal enforcement of the law. But I'll go a step further with another lesson. We need to be careful that we who want to speak in the public square do not allow ourselves to be hamstrung and shackled by the IRS. Many groups file for a 501c3 tax-exempt status, and they don't understand they're putting a muzzle in their own mouth. Don't bow the knee to Caesar. Confront him. Don't go to him and ask permission to criticize him. Go on the highest rooftop. Use everything at your disposal to cry out for justice and to cry out against wickedness in the land. And tell Uncle Sam that he can take some of his IRS 501c3 tax-exempt regulations back to the hot place where they came from. If you want to learn more about the dangers of the tax-exempt status and how the IRS has intruded into our lives and is subverting free speech, go to our website, voiceofresistance.org, and watch the series on the IRS. We have put together an online university to teach you to be a leader, a dread to the tyrants of this earth, and maybe even to some of the angels of hell. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books on theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. Prison, jail. I've been there. Been there as a concerned citizen reaching out to inmates, trying to share with them the love of Christ. Been there as an inmate. I've spent over a year of my life locked up in various federal and state facilities. This for my peaceful actions opposing the killing of babies by abortion. Attorney General Holder recently said that he was encouraging federal prosecutors to charge people that were caught with drugs for less offenses, for a lesser offense, to avoid the mandatory minimums. In this segment and the next, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about jail, imprisonment, crime, justice, and conjugal visits. Because in Mississippi, who has a 100-year history of allowing husbands and wives some time together in a jail setting so that they can celebrate and enjoy the vows of their marriage in a physically intimate way, the state of Mississippi has decided to suspend that program. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk first about justice. Do you believe that there is a God in heaven who understands what justice is? In other words, he gets it right? I mean, I would proffer that we cannot improve on what God has said. Chris Christie almost made a joke when he said, if you're going to overturn a 2,000-year institution like marriage, you should put it to the voters. We can't vote to overturn the laws of God. Public opinion and public consensus, or the best idea that I could come up with, could never be as good as or better than what God has said. Having said that, if you agree, did you know that the scriptures are full of details on what should happen to criminals? For example, if someone steals something, if he's caught and it's in his possession, he restores it twofold. So if he stole 1 sack of wheat, he has to give back 2. That's his punishment. And please note, he gives it to the victim. He doesn't give it to the state, he gives it to the victim. If it is not found in his possession, then depending on what he stole, he either has to repay it 4-fold or 5-fold. Again, to the victim. And if he cannot afford to pay the fine to the victim, he is sold. Basically, his labor is sold to somebody who then takes the money and gives it, right? The person is bought, and then the money goes to the victim, and the criminal has a certain amount of time that he has to work off that debt. But he gets to keep his family with him. It doesn't turn the children into orphans. It doesn't turn his wife into a woman desperate to feed her children. There's genius there. There's justice there. There's mercy and redemption there. And so my wife and I once, we had a lot of money stolen from us by a bookkeeper. She ultimately was charged with a felony. And the authorities asked us, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't want her to go to prison. What good is it to my wife and I, after she stole all this money, what good is it if she goes and sits in prison at the taxpayer's expense? It's almost funny. If a criminal is paying his debt to society, why is society paying the debt? So, we want justice. And God's word, the law of Moses, read Deuteronomy for yourself, read Leviticus for yourself. There are very specific things that happen to people for very specific crimes. The advent, if you will, of the jail system that we are with in America today came from a Quaker experiment that went awry. They decided, well, we're not going to do what we've done for hundreds of years, flog people for certain crimes, have them pay restitution for other crimes, have them executed still for other crimes. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to take them and we're going to put them in a small box, and we're going to call them penitents, so that they repent. They're alone with God and they see what they're wrong, and hence we get the name penitentiary. The problem is it didn't work. I've got to take a break, but here's a tragic figure. Over 1 in 100 Americans are behind bars right now. Over 2.4 million adults are behind bars right now. And America has the highest prison population per capita in the world. Friends, this isn't justice. Something's wrong here. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Conjugal visits behind bars. That's highfalutin talk for a husband and a wife being able to get together in a private setting and to enjoy the privileges of their marriage intimacy. Okay? I'm trying to be discreet here. Mississippi started the program for their state 100 years ago, and now they're bringing it to an end. No such program exists at the federal level, by the way. The idea behind it was to keep families together. And when I first heard about it years and years ago, I was outraged. Are you kidding me? They're criminals behind bars, and we're going to let them come in and have physical relations with their spouse? This is insane. Then I started to do jail time for my work in the pro-life movement. And then I saw men, some of whom should not have even been behind bars. And I listened to the stories of marriages breaking up. Listened to the stories of kids whose lives were becoming shipwrecks. And I will devote more time to this in upcoming shows. But there's an element of mercy that should be present with certain situations for the sake of the families of criminals. And again, many of these criminals are behind bars for nonviolent drug possession and drug offenses. And so we have the heavy hand of the government crashing in, creating a home where the children don't have dad there, the wife may be going on welfare, maybe getting food stamps, maybe divorcing her husband. And then you've got literally the field strewn with ruined lives because of the heavy hand of our government and a system, a prison system, that can be argued is unbiblical and hence unjust. It's a form of slavery, but without the safeguards of biblical slavery in the Old Testament. I know I'm giving you a lot to think about, but I just want to say this. With crimes and criminals where there are not acts of violence and murder against innocent people, keeping that family together is a valid goal. And if allowing a husband and a wife to be together a certain number of times a year helps keep that family together and helps keep those kids with a dad, it's something we ought to explore.